Greetings, family. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are new to my channel, please do consider to subscribe. Also comment respectfully, like and share my videos with your friends, your family, and your colleagues. Today, I want to look at part 4 of why I believe the allegations by the victims against TB Joshua. And I also want to look at the results or the consequences of not believing these allegations by the alleged victims. And I want to specifically look at the issue of secondary victimization. I've done my research, and most of my research, I've done it through Google, and the definitions and everything else would be from Google. So I want to acknowledge Google as my source when I was doing this research on the subject of secondary victimization. What is secondary victimization? Secondary victimization is what the alleged victims, or in any setup for that matter, I'll speak generally, but obviously referring to this particular issue or case of TB Joshua of Synagogue Church of All Nations. Secondary victimization is said to be when a victim suffers harm, not as a result of the criminal act, but due to the manner in which institutions and other individuals deal with the victim. You must remember here that there are allegations by these victims that they were physically, sexually, emotionally abused. And all these are criminal acts. They are offenses. I want to believe that in all countries, sexual harm, physical harm, emotional harm, it's a criminal offense. And when that happens, somebody must be criminally charged. But unfortunately, in this case, this did not happen because of the issue of power relations. And this was direct harm. This is the harm that they suffered directly, according to the allegations, on the hands of this powerful man, a well-known preacher, prophet for that matter, a man who had lots of monies. And you must remember that these victims were very powerless. They did not have money. They were young. They were isolated from their families, according to their allegations. Now here we're talking about the direct harm, the abuse, the sexual, the physical, the emotional abuse that was inflicted on them, which I want to reiterate were criminal offenses. The isolation, psychological harm, that is psychological, you being isolated from others. Imagine in the case of Ajoke, where we were told she was isolated for months, not days, not weeks, but months, as a form of punishment. Even these disciples, they were put in a place where they were guarding each other. If you see somebody doing something unbecoming, you have to report. The cameras were all over the place. This was an invasion of their privacy, which is a constitutional right, at least in our country. And I know for a fact that in other foreign developed jurisdictions, the right to privacy, it's a very important constitutional right. It is even enshrined in the Bill of Rights in our country and in other jurisdictions as well. So their right to privacy was invaded, and I can go on. So this was the direct harm that they suffered. Now, what about secondary victimization? Secondary victimization is further harm You can imagine you have been emotionally, physically, sexually, sometimes even economically, because I don't know if these people were paid. That point I'm not sure about, whether they were paid or whether they were just given an allowance. I'm not sure about this issue. So if they were not paid, we can also add the issue of economic abuse, because you can imagine that TB Joshua's empire, we were once told by Chris, it's a multi-million empire. So he basically built this empire, according to the allegations, on the back of these young children. They spend their prime times at Synagogue Church of Nations serving this guy. In some instances, not voluntarily, because at the later stage, when they wanted to leave, they had no option. They were stuck in the system. According to the allegations, by the way, I'll not keep on repeating the word allegations, but these are all allegations. We were told that, they were told that if you leave, you will not make it anywhere except here at synagogue. And you must remember, these people were young when they arrived here. So they were also emotionally blackmailed. So let's go back to the issue of secondary victimization. It is further harm. It is further harm, not as a direct result of a criminal act, but due to the manner in which the institutions and other individuals dealt with the victim. You see, it is further harm, direct, I've explained, it's further harm in the sense that, when you go to the police, those are the institutions. Remember, we're talking about the manner in which institutions and other individuals, if you go to the police station, the police would say, no, this is not our issue, or the police were paid. The police could not do anything about the situation. You must also remember that it can be secondary in the sense that, except for the institution failing to handle the matter very well, there are instances where even the criminal justice system can further blame the victim blaming. What is it that you do? Even individuals. Now, at the moment, people are saying, no, these kids, these ladies now, they are no longer kids. These ladies, they are lying. Even the church. Now, here, when I talk about the church, I'm not talking about the false church. I'm talking about the true church. The church is not showing any compassion on these ladies, on these gentlemen. I must also mention, there are gentlemen who are also part of the victimization. Nobody, the society at large. Instead, they protect the perpetrator, because the perpetrator is a very powerful man with lots and lots of money who can buy lawyers. I was listening to one of the brothers who came to the fore, who said, this is a man who could afford to buy Sen. Sen in Nigeria, a senior advocate of Nigeria. He could afford the services of 3 Sen. Now you can imagine, if you are just a young woman, a young man who has been stuck at SCON for so many years. You don't have money. You don't have a relationship with your country. Your passport is being confiscated. You cannot leave if you want to leave. Where are you going to start? You cannot even talk to your family, because, by the way, remember that you were isolated from your family. Nobody believes you. You are called liars. There are instances where they were even separated from their own siblings. I know of a situation where Chris, for example, the sister is one of the people who did the BBC documentary. But he came to the fore and defended TB Joshua. I don't know whether it means that he was not aware, because also there's a possibility that he separated them, divided and ruled them. That's a very powerful a system, by the way, to apply. He divided and ruled them. Where on the other hand, you are treating one sibling like this and the other one, you're treating them differently so that their story must not match. So this is what he did. This is what he did. So it can still be secondary victimization because there is repeated exposure to the perpetrator. You can imagine you having to stay with your perpetrator for 10 years, for 14 years. So it just didn't happen once. There was a main act, there was a direct act, but this thing, it's continuous. You know that any day you can be called. On top of that, there is also repeated interrogation of the same facts. You told BBC, you told this person, and in the process, some of them did not even believe you. Even now, there are people who don't believe. There's also some insensitive comments, very, very insensitive comments, which are made on the situation. Nobody has compassion. Let me tell you something. For a victim of this kind of violence, I will call it violence, because sexual abuse is violence, physical, emotional is violence. It is violence. There will also be secondary victims, except for secondary victimization. Your friends, your family, your employers, somehow they're also affected. Your friends who get to know about the story, your family members. I remember there's another lady who used to be at synagogue. I can't remember her name now. This girl was so beautiful. I think the father is an Israeli. If you know the girl's name, please just drop her name in the comments. Here, Bisola says, this girl's mother was crying, praying, crying, begging TB Joshua, please release my daughter. I want my daughter to come home. I want my daughter to come and go to school and be educated like your children. TB Joshua, your children are educated. I want my daughter to come home. That was a secondary victim. The families are also involved. And the sad part is that they are not believed. Some of them, even by their own siblings, some of them, even by their own families. He separated families. He separated siblings. One sibling is saying this story, the other one is saying another story. Even in my case, I told you in another video, my sister still believes in this guy. I told you the other day I was having a conversation with my sister who mentioned the guy 8 to 10 times without mentioning God. She was saying, if it was not for this guy, if it was not for this guy. And I'm like, is it him or is it God? Why are you just mentioning this guy? If it was not for him, I wouldn't be where I am. Well, I have a different story to tell, and this is my sibling. Now we're being divided by this man who is now even no more. But until today, families are divided like that. The church is divided like that. The Christian community is divided because of this one person. This should tell you something. Why him of all the people? Should he cause so much halabaloo, so much confusion in the body of Christ? Now, this secondary victimization that I'm talking about, please remember that we call it secondary victimization because it's about how institutions and individuals treat victims. Here the allegations is that TB Joshua treated them this way. That was direct harm. Now, how we react, how institutions react, how churches react, how the society at large react to these victims. If we are not careful, we are making these victims to suffer further harm. And this further harm that they are suffering, it's what we call secondary victimization. So it is very important for us to know or to be aware or for us to be cautious not to be involved in the repeated victimization of these people. The best thing that we can do to assist victims is to give them a hearing and to believe them, to say, sometimes it's just enough to say, I believe you. And that is why it was important for me to release an audio to say, I believe them. It's unfortunate that it seems as if this matter will never ever go to court, where the evidence is interrogated. But let me tell you, there is a higher judge who knows the truth, who has already judged the situation, and that judge is God, and he's a God of justice. The Bible says God acts in favor of the oppressed. He is a God of justice. There will be a judgment that will be meted in favor of whoever is correct, whoever is right in this situation. Let's not forget that there are consequences as a result of secondary victimization, and these consequences may involve in the main mental health. Their mental health can be affected. That is why I'm not surprised that we are told that Ajoke is somewhere in a mental institution. They can go through depression. Some of them, they can resolve to substance abuse, behavioral problems as a result of what they went through. And some of them, they will even end up rejecting God. I remember one of them said, God is evil. The God that I was introduced to is an evil God. Some of them, they can abandon their faith. The question is, does the church care? What is the position of the church in this situation? What is it that we are going to do as the real church of God? Is it just going to be a story that we talk about and we leave the matter unresolved? Or are we going to put systems in place as a church to regulate the church, to regulate the behavior of these charlatans, to regulate the behavior of these wolves who call themselves pastor in sheepskins?